Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the JKWD Project. JKWD Podcast. I was doing
That's
so
another LLC, buddy, is all I got to say.
Wow. I was doing so well a minute ago. Let's try that again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the JKWD Podcast, where I'm just learning how to talk for the first time.
I'm leaving it in. I'm leaving that in. Man.
Kelvin, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
You talk for a minute.
I am sitting here in sunny upstate New York. We actually have sunshine today and clear skies. I haven't looked at the thermometer to see what the temperature is, so I'm just going to say looks like a good day for a walk around the block. But we'll see how that is. Anyway, life's good. I woke up, I always like it because I wake up in the morning and I can move around on my own power. It's cool stuff.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. How about you?
Things are good here. I still have some of that cough that I had those last couple episodes. But yeah, that's how things go. But they're doing the roof across the street. I hope that didn't come out too much in the podcast. I don't think it did. Nope. Things are going well. I've been, by the time this comes out, I'll be 4 weeks in, but as we're recording, I'm 3 weeks into a 6-week kettlebell program, and I'm pushing it, and it feels really good to be pushing some weight around and have a kind of a structure behind it, which is not how it's been the last year since we've been kind of cooped up with COVID. Mm-hmm. Speaking of being cooped up with COVID, we have Pete Bombaci on the podcast today from the GenWell Project, or Project. Pete's Canadian, and his organization deals with human connection. We get better when we're physically connected to other people, whether we're having conversations or hugging and doing that as much as possible in person. Just being around others is good for us. You'll hear Pete talk about heart disease, obesity, and a lot of other risk factors that get increased with loneliness.
Yeah, he's got some good stats.
Yeah. We are brought to you today by Vitamin K Daily. It's your daily dose of positive from the Prince of Positive himself. It's the first thing I read every morning. You wake up, just get a little kick of what's gonna get you through your day if you're the kind of person who doesn't like mornings, particularly if you're the kind of person who's like, why did I wake up again? It's a good reason. All right. You get yourself 4 weeks.
I like waking up. It's a fun thing.
Yeah, I like waking up too, but my wife and my child are not morning people. They get into the day eventually, but not while they're still home with me.
There you go.
You get yourself 4 weeks free to Vitamin K Daily. Go to vitaminkdaily.com. Sign up today. After that, just $24.95 a year. If it's not for you, just cancel anytime during your 4 week trial and you won't get charged at all. But really, $24.95 a year, you can probably handle that. vitaminkdaily.com for that. We are also brought to you by Amazon Books. If you go to jkwdpodcast.com/books, you'll see more than 200 books that we've mentioned on the podcast, most of them with links out to buy them on Amazon. If you do that, if you click through our link, buy a book, we'll get a few cents. And like when I say a few cents, I think it's actually a few. Like it might be 3 or 4 or something. So buy all of them.
Depending, we might get up to 11 cents. You just never know.
Nice. So go buy all those books. And enjoy them. Again, that's jkwdpodcast.com/books. And on the other side of the music, you will hear our conversation with Pete Bombaci.
podcast where we talk about better humanhood and teach you how to dominate your world. You ready? Here we go.
Hey, look at that. There
Look
it
at that,
comes.
what a person. I get him. Or you got him. I got
You
him.
got him. Go ahead.
On time. Check it out.
Hello.
He heard me. Oh,
Hey,
good morning.
come on, guys. I can't be that bad. Do most people not show up on time? Like when we're doing interviews, this is stuff like podcasts.
Well, that's true, but I like to look at the precision with which they come in, as the clock strikes 11. Wow, look at that. That's amazing. The timing, especially with technology. So
And
anyway, good morning.
If it's okay, I'll admit that that's not usually my normal process. So it's either 5 minutes early or 5 minutes late. But for you guys, I want
all
to
right.
be here on time. So,
We really appreciate that.
hey, I'm happy to be here, and honestly, I really appreciate the opportunity to share our message. Because every time we get an opportunity to talk about the importance of human connection, something that we were never educated on, I think it's really valuable to people.
Yeah.
Where are you guys?
Well, Kelvin is just on the other side of the lake from you in the Syracuse, New York area. I'm down in Savannah, Georgia.
Wow.
Yeah, we met a lot of years ago, and I'm not sure which one won't let the other one forget the other one, but we stay pretty close anyway.
But we keep showing up on Fridays. So
How long have you guys been doing this?
podcast we've been doing, we're close to 5 years now. So
Wow, that's amazing. Hey, you guys are a great example of what staying connected, and obviously you guys have a pretty casual, you jokingly, Kelvin, talk about, nobody will let each other go. It's like, this is what friendship is all about. And most of us don't make the time for it. So kudos to you guys for keeping not only the podcast, but your friendship going for a long time.
Thank you. It's his fault.
Yeah. And I know we're talking about stuff here, but this is, it's somewhat a guy's thing. But I know that when people take the piss out of each other, that's a sign of love for men. Like, if I don't make fun of you, I'm not sure I really like you. It's how, if I don't have a nickname for you or I don't make fun of you, you should start really checking in on, are we really friends? Because that comfort level is what allows you to say, yeah, whatever,
Now I got to examine that, because there are other friends in my life. I've got to see, am I making fun of them? Should this relationship stay? No,
And I think there's a couple, there are some people who are much serious than the rest of us. Mm-hmm. But hey, I think in life, if we can have a laugh with people and if we can be ourselves and poke fun at each other, it reduces the level of stress and anxiety that many people are under each and every day. So isn't that what relationships are all about?
That is it.
yeah, it really is.
That is it. So, yeah. Well, welcome aboard.
That's a great leaping off point, actually. I mean, I'm guessing we're probably going to keep most of this in anyway, but typically we start by asking you to introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us your mission, which you've already mentioned is connecting, but if you want to, is human connection. But if you want to get into that a little bit deeper, and then give us your why. Why is that your mission? Yeah, and again, guys, thanks for this opportunity. I launched the GenWell Project in 2016, and we're a human connection movement, and our mission is to make the world a happier and healthier place by educating people about the proactive steps that we can all take by staying connected to one another, and not only educating us on something that we've never been educated on. We've been told to go to the gym, and we've been told to eat better, but also to get them to take action, because talking about it, and there's more and more research, most of it in the last 20 years, it's telling us just how important human connection is for our lives. But it's also giving people a catalyst, an excuse, permission, and many other things to make it happen. And so, since 2016, we've been providing people's tips, tools, ideas, research
anything that we can to help people start building healthy connection human habits today. Because the research is, and my why, Josh, is, look, here's what the facts are. Spending time with other people and the relationships that come from it are the single largest indicator of happiness in our lives. That's an 80+ year study out of Harvard. It reduces anxiety and depression, which, if you haven't noticed in the last decade or two, are skyrocketing and even worse during the pandemic. Increases empathy, compassion, and resilience. In a segmented, fragmented, and polarized world, we could use a little more empathy and compassion for one another, because when we connect with people, we better understand each other. And better understanding happens when you spend time face to face, not when you're tweeting at each other, which some of us seem to think that is the solution. Strengthens your immune system and your self-confidence. And I find it funny that many people think on the other side of the pandemic, people are just going to rush out and, come on the streets and hug everybody that walks by. Let's remember, it takes 3 weeks to create a good habit, and it creates 3 weeks to create a bad habit. So, we have some habits that we're going to have created over the course of the last year that we're going to need people to help us, whether that's a neighbor, a friend, a family member, a colleague who says, hey, why don't we go have a coffee? Let's go shoot the breeze. Let's talk through the challenges that we're all facing. And the final one that I'll throw out there is that spending time with other people increases your chances of living longer by up to 50%. And there's 2 new studies only in the last 6 months during the pandemic that social connection is the single largest preventative action that we can take to avoid depression. And there's now a direct correlation over the age of 50, isolation and loneliness doubles your risk of getting type 2 diabetes. And my why is also because none of us were ever educated on this. As I say, we were told to go to the gym. We were told to eat better. You guys know we're supposed to do 20 to 30 minutes a day of some type of activity. That we're supposed to eat some fruit and vegetables and pick them up when we go to the grocery store, or have a well-balanced meal. That changes, depending on the year. It's like carbs, no, high fat, less this, more that. It changes, but at least we know it because we've been educated our whole lives. We haven't been told about human connection because up until the early 2000s, we didn't need to tell people about human connection. And it's only with the advent of technology, the longer work days, the faster pace and more pressure, that most of us are now not spending the time doing what the research now shows is one of the greatest things that we can do for our happiness, our health, and our longevity. So I'll leave it at that, and maybe we can step off from there.
Yeah. Can we actually start with some definitions? When you talk human connection, you touched on it a little bit. Tweeting at each other is not human connection. There's some mediated connection, and we're doing some of that now, right, in Zoom, but like we're still not like we didn't shake your hands. We're not going to hug at the end of this conversation.
By the way, I would hug you at the end of this conversation.
Yeah, well, I this seemed like that sort of conversation where like we might tentatively introduce ourselves with handshakes, but by the end of this conversation, we're all going to hug. And like that's not going to happen because we're sitting here on Zoom, 1,000 miles away from each other.
Yeah.
I don't know if that worked for me because you guys got beards and I don't.
This is fun with facial hair during COVID. I don't normally have a beard. I just figured I'd do something for now.
Yeah, it gave you something to do at home, right?
Totally.
So this is a little less connection than we would have if we were sitting around a table, but it's a little more than texting each other or being on a phone call. What is human connection and what isn't human connection that some people think is?
Josh, it is. You've actually just hit a question that is honestly is one that's out there, and a lot of research is being done. We're just about to launch a piece of research which is really going to get a sense of how people are connecting and what the difference is. We really hadn't, I don't think a lot of research has been done about the difference between face-to-face and digital. But what I will say is thank goodness we have technology, because if we were going through this pandemic without the ability to connect this way, I think we'd be in a terribly worse shape. Part of the inspiration behind launching the GenWell Project was my mom talking about growing up in the Second World War in Northern Ireland. And she always talked about, as the Germans would leave London, they would drop their leftover bombs so that they could get the planes home. And her town happened to be right in the pathway. So they would get the sirens, they'd run out to the fields, they'd get away from their homes because they were always trying to drop on cities because they figured that's how they could do the most damage. And what would happen is after they would leave, the peace had kind of come over, everybody would come back into the city. And what did they do? Is they would hug each other. They would recognize that they were in it together, that they had survived, and that they would live to be another day and recognized how much they actually needed each other. Whether that was food, whether that was safety, security, all of Maslow's most fundamental needs that he calls out in the hierarchy of needs. When you're under attack like that, and even early on in the pandemic, when you're under threat, we all focus on the most fundamental needs, and human connection, or as Maslow said, love and belonging, is one of those fundamental needs. So as we go through it, thank God we have technology to have these types of conversations. But I think the research is showing quite clearly one of the things that we are missing is human touch, and those endorphin hits that make us feel happier and healthier. And whether it's, young people not getting it with their buddies, whether it's grandparents missing it with their grandchildren or even their children, whether it's people who live alone, both in Canada and in the US, it's roughly about 28% of the population now lives alone. And everybody's trying to figure out their way. But, digital technology is a great supplement to human connection, face-to-face human connection, which is an amazing thing in the time of a pandemic, but we need each other. And I think we're waking up to that fact more so now than ever before, that it is human connection that we all desire. And although some may struggle on the other side of this, every one of us will be more aware and conscious that actually those connections, both the deep, meaningful ones that we have with our loved ones, our family, but also those casual collisions that happen throughout the day, whether it was at Starbucks, whether it was at the water cooler at the office, the lunchroom, or frankly, just walking down the street and seeing neighbors. All of those are part of us feeling like we're part of something bigger than ourselves, that we're part of the world, part of a community, part of a whole bunch of connections that make us feel like we belong and that we're part of something important. So yes, technology is a wonderful thing, but it doesn't replace the actual human connection.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a little, personal story. We, my sister moved down here to Savannah a couple years after we did, and we fairly quickly started having them over for dinner on Friday nights. When the pandemic started, we moved to Zoom and we started inviting more people in, but it meant that it was me and my wife and our baby, and who at that time was a little over a year old, and my parents would be able to join in and in the Zoom call, and then we got some friends in, and we had we'd have a good crowd. Kelvin joined us a couple of times. We'd have a pretty good crowd on Friday nights for dinner, but we were all sitting in our homes. And my sister's birthday is in the summer, and we decided after 4 months or whatever it had been, 3 months, I think, we shut down in March last year, right around St. Patrick's Day. After 3 months of that, my parents decided to come down. My brother came up, and we didn't tell her. We said, "It's your birthday. Everybody's been safe. Come on over." She didn't know they were coming. And then after that, we just said, "You know what? Come on over." So we cut out the Zoom meetings, and so we're still seeing them regularly, but it's still a little bit sporadic, because now whenever one of us has a cold, like I have right now, they don't come over because maybe the COVID test was wrong, and so we're getting a little more than we were, but not as much. When we moved into this house, we had a housewarming, and we invited everybody on the street. They're like, it's a short street, 32 houses, including us. And we got, maybe 6 or so neighbors came out, and we had a bunch of others knock on our door later that week and said, "Hey, I'm sorry I didn't come," but everybody was so surprised that we invited them. Like, why would I have my friends come clog up your driveways and park in front of my house and let you listen to the chatter and the happy sounds and the smell the grill? We need to watch out for each other. These aren't the people I'm going to call if my alarm's going off. I'm going to call Daryl across the street. So it seems like people have forgotten that they can connect with the people around. We don't have to be born into the same house. We don't have to be brought into the same situation like work or something. We all live here. Let's connect with each other.
Josh, you should be an ambassador for the GenWell Project, my friend, because it's that awareness and consciousness that actually is what we're trying to create in the broader society. I know in Canada, and again, Canada and the U.S., not a lot of difference. Let's be honest about it. In Canada, 50% of people don't know their next door neighbor's name, and only 34% of people feel like they have a relationship where they could actually, ask for help and get support. So most of us don't actually know our neighbors, and yet the research. And funny enough, I was just doing something before this that lists there's probably 20 benefits to knowing your neighbor. And one of the greatest ones is, hey, if something goes wrong, whether that's a crisis or whether, your fence falls down, a tree falls down, whatever, wouldn't it be better if you actually knew each other before you got to a point where there was a crisis and you're like, hey, can you help my son or my daughter or my grandmother or my mom, whatever? All these relationships help us get through life. And that's whether it's your neighbors, family, friends, even colleagues at the office. We all play a role in each other's life. And I think, unfortunately, over the last 40 or 50 years, we've built a world in which we thought we could get through it without any help, that we didn't need other people. And although we were sensing, anxiety and depression skyrocketing pre-pandemic, I think although people may not have been able to put their finger on it, we were living in the most individualistic world in history. And I think the pandemic just woke us all up to the fact that, holy cow, what was happening is I was so disconnected because I was working longer. The average person was spending 12 hours a day on screens. I'm watching other people and their social media feeds. And not only is that distracting time, but it's also emotionally impacting me because everybody's posting their human highlight reel. And as a result, I feel like, well, I can't keep up with that. Well, the reality is, if you have 50 friends or more, which most people I think have 200 or 300, and friends is certainly a term we use loosely.
Right, friends being like Facebook friends, you mean?
Exactly. The reality is there's somebody traveling somewhere every day. And so you could be looking at your Facebook feed and somebody's in Italy today, somebody's somewhere else in America today, somebody is in Hawaii, somebody's here. Well, you start to believe that you should be on holiday every day of the year. And as we know, that just isn't reality. And when I was a kid, my competitive set were literally the 5 people I could see out my front window. Because when I came home from school or you came home for work, the reality is we didn't talk to each other. We didn't know each other other than when you went to church or you went to the bowling league or whatever, the kids were on the street. But the reality is when you came in your home, you weren't constantly bombarded with what everybody else in the world was doing. You could actually focus on you and your family and your bonds and all those things that now what the research shows makes us happier, healthier, and live longer.
I'm in so what's a good term for me? Outlier. That's it. That's not the same as outright liar. That's different. But I'm a relationship guy, but I don't have a lot of them. Does that make sense? I can make friends with just about anybody. I've got friends across the world that I've never met. When Twitter first came out, for instance, back when you could actually have a conversation and create some things. I mean, I made a lot of friends that way. In my neighborhood, however, I know the lady on one side of me. I've said hi to the people on the other side of me. I occasionally have a conversation from the street with the people across from me. I don't know who most of the rest of these people are. Now, I've only been in this neighborhood since 1996. Okay,
so
92.
not too long, eh?
So I haven't been here too long. But you know, there was a thing that, I mean, with the media and everything, we have developed such a mistrust of our neighbors or people in general, whether they're right next door or not. So if you haven't grown up with them and know them, an awful lot of people are hesitant to get to know somebody. And since the news only highlights the really crappiest stuff, you know, the latest murder, who you know, people are afraid to do that. So sometimes it's easier for me to create a relationship or a friendship long distance and carry it on that way. And then, you know, the goal is, I got to go meet that person. They've been my best friend for a lot of years, and I haven't even met them in person yet. Last year, there was a woman I made friends with on Twitter from a long time ago, who finally got close enough to the area where we could drive to meet each other. So after being friends for like 10 years, we finally got to meet each other in person, which was a magnificent experience, I have to say. But not everybody has that. I'm real easy to get to know if you're not trying to hurt me when you meet me. You know, so in my regard, I do that for a lot of people because I mean, I can be your friend immediately. Like I forget the filter and everything until you have to remind me, we just met. I don't think you should tell me that. You know, that kind of thing. But sometimes it's tough. I spent some time in California. Nobody in California talked to anybody in California because you just and if you were from a big city, no. I went through L.A. I met a guy in a rest stop who said, when you go to L.A., don't talk to nobody. Those people are crazy. Just get out of there as soon as you can. And one day I hit the city limits of L.A. without knowing it, and I panicked just from the conversation that this guy gave me. But I'm probably one of the friendliest guys in the world. But I am a little hesitant to just grab anybody because you just never know. So, but yet, you know, my number one love language is touch. So when we get to people, you know, I'm a Toastmaster. We had to usually have these Toastmaster conventions. My nickname was the district hugger because once we got to this event, I was hugging everybody. Everybody got a free hug, no matter who it is. So it's an interesting dichotomy that we can live in.
Calvin, you know, we only have an hour for this conversation. You have now just taken, like I literally had to pull out a piece of paper and start writing down notes because of what you were saying. So first off, you and I can tell you right now, we'd already have hugged it out by this point because I love hugging as well. And I also am the type of person that within a minute, and it's probably from your speaker training, it's really about the 7 habits of highly effective people, which is how quickly can you make people feel comfortable? Are you the first one to talk about you, or are you the first one to ask somebody about them? You know, how can you help build those connections? And I think it's really important. And I think as you talk about, you know, the big city in California, you know, I would argue, and I touched on it a little bit earlier, since the Second World War, we've lived in the greatest growth era in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. And that's at the same time, rather than building stronger communities and coming together, we built the most individualistic society in history. And there is a lack of trust, and there is a lot of fear. And there is a lot of that fear is driven by media, driven by social media. because, we're fearful about people taking our children on the street. We're fearful, and we may be fearful that, so-and-so has more money and, we don't have enough and we can't live up to the expectations. As I use that example about my competitive set, keeping up with the Joneses was a lot easier when we couldn't watch a million Joneses. And so we've created this anxiety that lives in society, and that is what the GenWell Project was here to address, which is, first off, most of us don't know the benefits of staying connected with anybody, our neighbors, our friends, our family. We might intuitively go, yeah, like I think I like people. I think I like hanging out with them, but let me give you the facts. And once you know them, you go, wow, I never even thought of it. If I thought I was feeling down, or if I thought that, I wasn't feeling myself, I'd go for a run. I'd go for a walk in nature. I'd go buy some fruit and vegetables, eat some healthy food, maybe get some sleep, drink some water, things that we've all been educated on. But what we never thought about was how important it is to stay socially connected. So I think that we can overcome, and it won't happen in one weekend. It won't happen in 1 month. It won't happen in 1 year. It won't happen because we have a new president. It is going to take time. We got here over 60 years of increasingly becoming disconnected from one another, and it's going to take time. But what we can do is educate people, and bit by bit ask them to take action. And again, when they have the information of the benefit, and then we give them the tools. And on our website, we have tools like digital invites. We've got information about social connection. We've got infographics that give you ideas on how to get connected. And then finally, we hosted GenWell weekends, which were really the excuse, the permission, and the catalyst for you to say, and our goal is, in Canada, we want to get Canadians doing it. In the US, we want to get Americans doing it, because if I can get all of society, if I can get all the Americans at the same time to think that this weekend, like the 4th of July, on the 4th of July, you guys know to put on blue, red, and white. To go and talk to your neighbor or get your friends together, have a barbecue. We all know what to do. And if we can get to a point where we educate and catalyze people around the idea of we should be getting connected because of all the benefits to me and to the people around me, I believe that we can catalyze people to get connected. Now, you talked about your relationships. So I want to ask you this. You've got the two sides of this. So you're really social. Would you call yourself an extrovert or an introvert?
Methodology is more of an extrovert. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, at the end of the day, extroverts say, I consider myself an ambivert. I can talk to anybody, but I also love being at home and being disconnected from everybody.
I have no problem being in, I've been single for how many years now, Josh? I don't know. A lot. 2004, whatever that is. I have no problem being in my house. I'm not stressed. I'm not anything.
Yep.
I can sit here and listen to the clock tick.
Yep.
But if somebody wants to come over,
you're in.
Good.
You're in.
I'm good. Yeah.
And I think this is a beautiful thing, because being alone does not mean lonely. Different people have different makeups. Introverts, funny enough, I have a few friends that are introverts who say, Pete, I was totally comfortable being an introvert until the pandemic came. And then when somebody took away the option for me to go out and see people when I wanted to, I was in control, which is a big thing for introverts, is they want to control. They don't want to be in a street party. They want to go have a coffee, or they might even want to sit in a room where there's other people, but nobody's talking to them. The reality is now we've had some of those things taken away with us, the opportunities to actually get connected. Yeah, you're going to say.
Here's a crazy thing about that. As good as I am in a public situation like that, my best relationships are one-on-one. Josh and I used to go to lunch just to sit there and chat for that. We were okay at a party. I could do that too, but I'd have a party about once a year. Normally, my relationships are one-on-one conversations. So, but I can have a lot of those around the world.
Yeah.
So the GenWell Project, I mean, our motto is better humanhood, just how to have a better life. Josh came up with that, and I'm like, yeah. So that's what we do. Just helping people figure out how to be better. So you're perfect Yes, thank you very much.
You guys are perfect. And I think the final thing I'll say, just on all the things you said there, is as with everything in life, it's about balance, right?
Yes.
You know, my next question to you is going to be, hey, Calvin, do you have people that you hold dear? Because we do need some deep, meaningful relationships that we can connect with, and we can have those deeper, meaningful conversations. If you've got those, then all those other Twitter conversations and all those other friends that you've got around the world are just part. You know, Dunbar's number, you guys may be familiar with this, which is the average person can only have 150 relationships. They can only manage 150 relationships, up to usually 3 to 5 in those really deep, meaningful relationships. And then there's probably 3 or 4 different groups that add up to 150. But many of those people are people that we love. We might talk to them once a year. You might talk to them only through Twitter, but they add to your life. They add to the relationships that you have. But if you only have those, you won't be in a good place over time. And if you only have the deep, meaningful, which is actually what's happening right now, most of us are battling cabin fever, where we only see a small group of people that we love dearly. But what we're recognizing is, hey, all those other conversations that I had throughout the course of my day, I call them the casual collisions. Those are really important for me to talk about sports with this person and the news and politics and this and that. And that gave me a balance and a life that was much bigger than just, hey, honey, I love you, or hey, kids, you know, you're great, or, you know, even being by yourself. In your case, Calvin, you know, we need the balance. Life is about balance. And I think we're waking up to how much being out and about in our normal course of the day made us happier and healthier.
Yeah. I do trade you the coffee.
How have things been where you are? Kelvin and I are living very different pandemic experiences to some extent. In Georgia, we essentially opened up after a month of shutdown. I mean, the governor put in place a shelter in place for at-risk folks, but you know, restaurants pretty quickly went to 50% capacity, and you know, a lot of cities and counties in Georgia stopped charging for outdoor dining permits. And here in Savannah, we had a lot of outdoor dining anyway, but there are some places that said, okay, we don't need these 8 parking spots. Let's put a tent out there. You know, we'd rather have the 4 tables that we can get out of them. You know, so as much as I haven't gone out a lot, even as a family, we're starting to go out a little more. We haven't had any of the, you know, larger gatherings. You know, my Masonic lodge was closed for a few months, but it opened back up at capacity. They told us to keep distance, but there's no real enforcement. You know, we have a room capacity, but we're never near it anyway. And we don't have. We're part of a group that got together a couple of Thursdays a month and yeah, had a couple of drinks and talked politics, and they've gone virtual. They still haven't come back in person, but we were, you know, that restaurant doesn't want to deal with a group of 25 people at a table right now still, but I've had more opportunity to get out, and you know, I've been wary about going to a coffee shop and sitting in the lobby, but I'm going to get back to that because I need to. My daughter got into daycare in October, and she keeps bringing germs home, and my wife, who works outside of the house, doesn't get anything, and I'm on my butt for 2 weeks every time. So I got to get out in the world and get back to having my immune system get used to getting hit with stuff. So I'm you know, as soon as this thing clears up, I'm back out of the house. How have things been there for you and for I'm guessing as a human connection project, GenWell is not loving being a distributed team right now.
Well, it's interesting, and Calvin, I want to hear what your experience is in Syracuse. But you know, here in Toronto, it's a little chillier than Georgia. Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you, It's funny. I kind of feel like we've all gone through phases. Initially, when this happened, I looked at it like I think many people. It's like, wow, we get an extended long vacation. It happened at the start of March break. Hey, this is, we're going to get 2-3 weeks here. No problem. I'll shut her down. No problem. Then as we got into the summer, it was kind of like, we made it to the summer. I don't care if they want to shut it down, whatever. I'm going to be outside. We're going to be playing. We're going to be spending time. Yeah, I think they said something about social distancing. So we'll stay distant. I think September, people got a little nervous because their kids and what was going on with school. And we moved our kid because we didn't trust the system to take care of it. But I will say that I think when we got to Christmas time and we got into the new year, I think it really started to take a toll on a lot of people, including our family, in which, it's now been a long time. And in Toronto, up here in Canada, we've been locked down. Frankly, I would suggest, and I don't know the exact number, if it's not 50% or more since last March, we've been in lockdown a lot. And, we've bubbled with 2 other families on our street. So knowing our neighbors, Kelvin, here's a great example in a time like this. I can't see my friends that live in Vancouver, like physically. I can't, even other friends, there may be a few around, but the people that we see every day are people like us, right beside us, who happen to have kids roughly the same age. So really important in this scenario. But, that lockdown is taking a toll. The good news is we're grateful. And the only reason, I say we're grateful because we're not worried about food, water, shelter, safety, or security. And social connection is still doable. And in regards to the GenWell Project, here's what I would say is we were never anti-technology. We were always about finding the balance. So nothing really changed. We still are about driving people to get connected face to face, whether it's family, friends, neighbors, or colleagues. And it might have taken a pandemic to wake us all up to the message that we were sharing, because many people pre-pandemic would kind of look at us and kind of go, well, what do we need you for? I see people every day, but do you really appreciate it? Do you really understand it? Do you really realize how much we do need each other? And I saw there was a study in the New York Times that was written up, and it said, I think it was 80% of our days were part of routine. We went to the same Starbucks. You took the same drive to work. You walked in the same door. You parked in the same place. You had lunch at the same set of places. Most of our days were structured. We had routine, and that's what we as human beings desire. Mm-hmm. And 20% of the day was random. Well, now it's a little bit of the other way around. Every day there's new stats, new numbers, open, close, what's on, and so this is part of the reason. And we don't know when this is ending. We don't even know if those vaccines are going to be the end cure, because we still need to wait till everybody gets it and all those things. And it's creating a lot of stress and anxiety, aside from the fact that, businesses in Toronto, small businesses in Toronto, and I'm sure it is where you are, Kelvin, and probably where you are as well, Josh, they are suffering. Mm-hmm. And this is the power of going through a global, the original inspiration behind the GenWell Project was a blackout on the northeastern seaboard. Kelvin, you might even have gone through that back in 2003. And when we go through something together, we feel more comfortable opening up to each other, because I know you're going through something, whether it's cabin fever, business pressures, relationship issues, kid issues, homeschooling, as I'm doing with my 6-year-old now. But when we go through things together, it makes it easier for us to be vulnerable, because we recognize that we're all going through it together. What we need to do on the other side of this, and why the movement is so important as we move forward, is recognizing, we're not going back to the way it used to be. There's going to be more challenges far beyond the health issues of COVID-19, and people are going to need each other more than ever. The problem is most of us feel anxiety about reaching out and asking for help. So if the relationships are already there, that makes it easier for people to talk to you and say, hey, Josh, my son's not doing well, or, hey, Josh, I just lost my job. Do you know anybody who needs somebody? Could I, hey, Josh, can I help you with anything? We are going to go through so many challenges, and having that support network of people around us is what's going to help us on the other side of this. And what we want to be is just that catalyst that actually makes it easier for people to build those relationships so we can all get through this a little bit easier.
Yeah, I remember that Eastern Seaport blackout. It happened right after I moved to Syracuse. I was in the mall. I'm glad I didn't take the elevator that day because people were stuck for hours, and then the power was out for like 4 days.
Yeah. That was the original inspiration of the whole movement. Was that day I was working in the beer business at the time. I was in an office out by the airport here in Toronto. I made my way home to my house. I had an elderly mom at the time, and I rode down Yonge Street, the longest street in the world, right here in beautiful Toronto, Canada. And what I saw when I rode down the street was amazing. You see the beauty and the kindness of the human species in times of crisis, people directing traffic, people handing out water, people being kind to each other, talking to each other, people picking each other up on street corners, which doesn't happen on a normal day. And so in times of crisis, we are incredibly beautiful. The problem is we forget about it and we go back to the old ways. And that night I was at a buddy's house for a barbecue because we had nothing else to do. So we just came out and got connected. And at 9 o'clock at night, I went out on the front porch, and on the street was packed. And I thought, wow, look at these guys. These guys must know each other. They must be really close. To your point, Kelvin, earlier, just about not knowing, with this person, you wave at this person. Mm-hmm. I go out and I talk to all the people on the street. I go, oh, you guys must be really tight, eh? And they all looked at me like I had 3 heads. They were like, no, we don't know each other. And I was like, so you guys, you're all out here having a party. There was like drinks and eats and kids throwing footballs and riding bikes. And I was like, so you're telling me you guys don't know each other? And they're like, yeah, no, never happened. And what I realized that night is what we do need is a catalyst. And I can't turn the power off a couple times a year to force us to do it. But if I educate you, if I give you all the reasons why spending time with whoever it is, family, friends, neighbors, colleagues, is so important to your health, to your happiness, and your longevity, I hope over time that somebody will say to somebody, or unfortunately what normally happens is people get to the crisis, they have a heart attack, and then they realize, holy cow, I need some people to help me. I can't do this, I can't do that, or I lose a job and now I need to find a job. Take any challenging scenario in our lives and we need other people to help us. Unfortunately, or at least what I should say is proactively, my goal is to get you connected so that when that crisis happens, you're already covered. You got those supportive relationships in place and you don't go through the crisis in such a negative way.
Do you have events, pre-pandemic, obviously, do you have events that you plan for that? And do you have kind of a neighborhood action thing?
So here's the interesting thing, and when we talk about community, we think of it in a much broader sense: friends, family, neighbors, colleagues. So it's everybody that is part of your supportive network. Mm-hmm. The silly thing of this whole thing, Josh, and I say silly knowing what the strategy is and the why behind it, right, is that we don't actually host any events, because a lot of people say, so what do you guys do? And I actually say we do nothing. And people go, well, what do you mean? Well, what the research shows is that the relationships that are most likely to give you the longer term health and happiness benefit aren't me bringing you to a big park with 10,000 other people and putting on a band and having hot dogs and drinks, because most of us will actually just go either with the people we want or go by ourselves. But many people don't actually, connect with other people.
Right.
And secondly, if I live in X and you live an hour away, the likelihood of us maintaining those bonds are less than if you're my neighbor, you're my friend, you're my colleague. And most of us aren't even investing in those relationships, the ones that are right beside us. Both physically and emotionally, we're connected to family and friends. We're physically connected to neighbors and colleagues because we tend to work, within each other. The reality is we want you, by hearing the information, to use us as the excuse to send out an invite, to book an occasion, a barbecue, have a coffee with somebody, a street party, a potluck, a ball hockey game, a basketball. We don't, as we say in our content, we don't actually care what you do. What we want to do is get you to send out the invite, and you decide what's right for you and who you want to get connected with, whether it's the people you've been meaning to get connected with, or maybe it's actually that person that you haven't thought of in a while, but it's a high school or a university buddy or an old colleague that you're like, I really love Kelvin. When I used to see Kelvin, he put oxygen in my bubble, or he gave me a lift. And those are the people we need to reconnect with, because those are the meaningful relationships that can last a lifetime. But most of us don't make the time to go make them happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I said, when I was in Massachusetts, I was a reporter on a small weekly newspaper, and one of the things that some of the communities used to have, and these were often organized by police departments, was they'd call them neighborhood porch nights. And it was just, people aren't going to be breaking into cars if the neighbors are out on the porch. And if the neighbors are all out on the porch, even if they never come down into the street and shake hands with their neighbors, if you see the people across the street, if you see the people next door out on their porches, even if you're yelling back and forth, you're watching out for the neighborhood. If people understand that people see what's going on, it winds up being a safer place. It winds up being a more social place, and you can make those connections. And now I get where it doesn't make sense for, even if it was a block party, for GenWell Project to try to have a relationship with 30 different households, on one street to try to get everybody there. Better to have a kit to say, hey, Josh, why don't you go organize this thing? Here's some resources for you.
So how do you reach? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, Josh, you just hit it on the head. As we've taken a pause right now because we're coming back, and we really do want to be able to provide people who are looking for partners and sponsors, government, foundations, corporations who want to be part of creating these connections in our communities. And you're right. And part of what's happened over those last 60 years that we mentioned earlier is we've built bigger houses for smaller families. We built back decks instead of front porches. We have taller fences in our backyard. Everything that we've done has created the isolation that we're waking up in. And if you still have front porches down in Georgia, in Savannah, that's a beautiful thing, because you're right.
My neighborhood doesn't, but we've got, a lot of people have chairs out in front of their homes. The next street over, most of them have front porches.
Yeah, it's honestly, that's amazing. And the one thing I'll say, unfortunately, human connection for many people is only seen through the eyes of a crisis. So in that case, it's neighborhood watch. Let's fear other people, so we should get connected, because if we connect each other, we can protect each other.
Right.
Or, we're going to get together for a walk for mental health. And we're going to get connected because, young people are suffering, so, we should do something for them. Or seniors, it's going to be a seniors day. So it's all about focusing on people that are old and immobile and don't have any friends and they're isolated. The message of the GenWell Project is that we have to stop putting this issue through the lens of an illness, a crisis, or a cause. What we need to do is celebrate human connection. And as I say, we don't know the facts, so we can't. Nobody's wrong for where we are. But what we want to do is educate people about the importance of human connection, so that we think. If you think of it, when do we have celebrations of life for people? After they die.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. I'd actually argue that insanity is celebrating people's life after they die. At the end of the day, we need to get into the habit of connecting with people and celebrating all of our lives. And again, I don't care who it's with. I don't care if it's your friends, your family, your neighbors, your colleagues, but I will also say that having a balance in those relationships, depending on the crisis that we may go through in future, whether it's a health issue, a job issue, a financial issue, a relationship issue, having all those relationships and in place before we get to one of those crises is the thing that will help you get through that crisis, whether it's the coping of having a conversation, whether it's finding solutions, and ultimately building the resilience that will make you happier and healthier as you move through it.
So how are you getting your message to the people? How are you actually connecting with the people you need to talk to that need to hear this?
Well, Kelvin, you and Josh are part of getting our message out. And that's why right off the top, I said thank you, because it is conversations like this going out to your community that awakens one person, 5 people, 10 people. And we've been doing this for 5 years. We've pretty much self-funded. It's mainly volunteers that work on it. We've just recognized the value of what we're doing, and we're having conversations with a lot of researchers in the U.S. There's a great program called the Coalition to End Isolation and Loneliness in the U.S. I'm connecting with those folks in the upcoming week. There's a researcher out of BYU, Julianne Holt-Lunstad. They're working on the research to help validate and to reinforce everything that we're doing, as well as other organizations around the world. But in Canada, where I would say we're behind the US and behind the UK, who now has a loneliness minister, Japan just hired a loneliness minister. Australia has some programs in place. We are currently in process of having conversations with federal ministers to put this on the radar. I would argue that there is a freight train of pain and hurt coming down the tracks at us. Somebody had said to me once that in the next 7 to 8 years, the single largest killer of the human species will be loneliness and isolation. You won't die of loneliness and isolation, but loneliness and isolation increases your chances of heart disease by 32, 34%, depending on you want to talk about stroke or heart attack. Mm-hmm. It increases your chances of dementia, type 2 diabetes, as I mentioned earlier, anxiety and depression, suicide, obesity, and the list goes on. And yet, as I say, none of us know this. And so when we're struggling, oftentimes we think about other solutions, when the greatest solution right now, especially in the middle of the pandemic, the greatest gift that we can give one another is picking up the telephone, getting on a Zoom call, a Skype, or maybe even going for a physically distanced walk. But this is what we need to understand, the impact that we can not only make on ourselves, but make on the other people around us just by reaching out and getting connected. So your opportunity to spread it here is big. We do social media posts every day. We're on pause right now as we restructure to relaunch in the coming weeks, but people can follow us on our website at genwellproject.org, follow any of our social channels. They can look back through the last 5 years of tips, tools, ideas, and motivation to get connected. And then leave us your name on our website so that we can follow up, because we are going to make the world a happier and healthier place just by getting people to get connected face to face on a more regular occasion.
Well, Pete, thanks so much for being here. Normally we wrap up by asking if there's anything we didn't get to that you were hoping to, but it seems like you wrapped everything up nice and neat. The social, where can people find GenWell Project on social? Since it's not attached to the website right now.
So it's I think it's at GenWell Project for the most cases.
Okay.
I think on LinkedIn it's the GenWell Project. In some so if you just Google GenWell or search it in any of the social channels, you'll find it. Please follow us. Sharing our message is what we love to do. Educating people and seeing the impact that we can have on other people's lives is what we love to hear about. But more importantly, recognize that, it's not going to happen in one day, 1 week, as I mentioned earlier. This is going to take a process, and it's you two going out and sharing it with your community and your community then sharing it with one other person or thinking of who they could reach out to and make a difference. So I really want to say thank you for the opportunity to share the message here today.
Well, thank you for being here.
Yes, sir. And one day we'll figure out how to get together and take care of that hug.
My friend, that's a commitment that we will make that happen. and in the meantime, I hope we can all get back to hugging those that are even closer to us, because I think the world could benefit from a huge hug right now. So thanks, guys. Really appreciate the time.
All righty. Take care of yourself.
Ciao for now.
Hey, thanks for listening. Show notes and more at jkwdpodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends. And we will see you next week. Bye.
A Better Humanhood production.